if you were born in the 70s or early 80s, there's a quiet sentence that has probably followed you your entire life, even if no one ever said it out loud. And that sentence is this: deal with it, don't make a scene, don't ask for help, be strong. You learned it early, maybe watching your parents survive without time, without softness, without words for feelings. You learned it playing outside for hours with no adults around. You learned it swallowing disappointment because crying did not fix anything. You learned it by becoming capable before you were ready. And today people admire you for that. They call you resilient, independent, grounded, mature. But what they don't see is the cost, because strength learned too early often comes from having no choice. And many of you are walking around carrying a quiet exhaustion that no one ever named. You can remember smells, songs, streets, textures, conversations from decades ago with perfect clarity. Yet when it comes to your own needs, you go blank, you minimize, you say it's nothing, you say others have it worse. You wait until you're alone to cry, if you cry at all. And maybe your body has started speaking for you with anxiety, with chronic pain, with a tight chest, with a fatigue that rest doesn't fix. And still, you tell yourself you should be able to handle it because you always have. This video is not about nostalgia and it's not about blaming your parents. It's about understanding why so many people from your generation feel strong and empty at the same time. Why asking for help feels like weakness. Why love feels safer when it's shown through actions instead of words. And why your nervous system still believes that needing someone is dangerous. If any part of this feels uncomfortably familiar, stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't about fixing you. It's about finally understanding you. There is a pattern that keeps showing up again and again in the stories people from your generation tell, and it sounds like pride on the surface, but underneath it carries something heavier. You say, we were tough, we figured things out, we didn't need anyone, and that is true. You became capable, adaptable, resilient. You learned to enjoy the present moment, to remember life with your senses instead of a screen. You learn to survive boredom, silence, and uncertainty without collapsing. But here's the part that almost no one says out loud. You did not become that way because it was ideal. You became that way because there was no other option. Many of you learned independence, not as a skill, but as a necessity. Your parents were working exhausted, emotionally unavailable, or simply repeating what they themselves had learned. And as a child, your nervous system made a very intelligent decision. It learned not to expect comfort, not to rely on rescue, not to ask for too much, because asking did not feel safe. So you adapted, and that adaptation worked incredibly well for decades. It helped you build careers, raise families, endure losses, and keep going when others fell apart. But adaptations are not the same as choices. And what once kept you functioning may now be quietly keeping you disconnected, because the same system that learned to survive without support also learned to minimize pain, to postpone feelings, to turn vulnerability into something private, hidden, controlled. You learned that crying did not solve anything, that complaining made things worse, that emotions were something to get over, not something to listen to. And so you carried on, strong, silent, capable, while inside something slowly tightened. Many of the comments people leave say the same thing in different words. I can handle anything, but I don't know how to ask for help. I love deeply, but I don't know how to show it. I feel everything. I only cry when I am alone at night. And this is not a personality flaw. It is a nervous system memory. Your body remembers what it was like to need comfort and not receive it. So it learned to stop needing. And that is why intimacy can feel uncomfortable even when you want it. Why being taken care of feels strange. Why resting can make you anxious. Why silence feels safer than emotional exposure. And why so many of you find relief, not in talking, but in music, memories, sensations. and solitude. Those are the places where your system learned it could exist without risk. And when life today asks you to be emotionally expressive, openly vulnerable, verbally affectionate, your body reacts as if something dangerous is happening because for a long time it was, and this is where many people misunderstand your generation. They think you are cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable, when in reality you are deeply sensitive people who learn to protect that sensitivity very early. Strength became your armor, and the armor worked, but armor is heavy. And when you wear it long enough, you forget that you're allowed to take it off. And the cost of never taking it off often shows up later, not as sadness you can name, but as anxiety without a clear reason, tension that lives in the body, exhaustion that does not go away, and a quiet sense that something is missing. Even when life looks fine from the outside, nothing is wrong with you. What is happening makes sense. And before we talk about change, we need to fully understand this, because without understanding, you will keep trying to fix yourself for reactions that were never a failure, they were survival. One of the most striking things people from your generation share is how vivid their memories are. You don't just remember events, you remember how things felt, the smell of the street after rain, the sound of a song playing on the radio, the texture of the pavement under bare feet, the silence of a room when everyone else was asleep. This isn't nostalgia. This is how your brain learned to store experience. When there was nothing documenting it for you, your memories live in your body, not in images. And that same depth that allowed you to remember life so richly is also what made emotional wounds sink deeper. Because when something hurt, there was no language for it, no adult sitting beside you helping you make sense of it. You felt it fully, and then you had to move on. Many of you learned early that emotions were private, that you were expected to manage them on your own. And over time, that created a subtle but powerful belief: if I open this, I won't be able to stop. If I let myself feel, everything will fall apart. So instead, you learned to compartmentalize. You felt joy deeply and pain quietly. You laughed with friends and cried behind closed doors. You showed love through responsibility, through work, through showing up, not through words. And that became normal, safe, predictable, but your body never forgot what it had to hold alone. And this is where many of you begin to feel confused later in life, because suddenly emotions start leaking through the cracks. Anxiety appears out of nowhere, your body aches, your chest feels tight, your sleep changes, and you don't understand why, because nothing dramatic is happening now, but your nervous system is not reacting to the present. It is responding to decades of postponed processing. Emotions don't disappear when they are ignored. They wait, and when they finally demand attention, it often feels overwhelming, which only reinforces the original fear that feeling is dangerous. Many people from your generation say something like, I thought I was fine until my body forced me to stop, or I didn't realize how much I was carrying until I couldn't carry it anymore. This is not weakness. This is biology. The body keeps the score. And when emotions never had a safe place to move through, they find other pathways: tension, pain, illness, exhaustion. And still you tell yourself, others had it worse. I should be grateful. I should be able to handle this. And that inner dialogue keeps the cycle going, because gratitude does not cancel pain, and strength does not mean absence of need. What makes this even more complicated is that many of you were praised for being easy children, low maintenance, independent, strong, no trouble. And that praise taught you that love came when you didn't ask for much. So even now, as adults, you hesitate to take up space emotionally. You hesitate to need reassurance. You hesitate to say this hurts, because somewhere deep inside your system still believes that being too much risk, being alone. And yet at the same time, there's a longing you feel when you hear certain music, when you remember certain moments, when someone finally sees you without you having to explain yourself. That longing is not for the past. It is for safety. It is for a kind of connection that allows you to be strong and supported at the same time. And this is where understanding changes everything. Because once you see that your patterns are not flaws but adaptations, you can stop fighting yourself and start listening to what your body has been trying to say for years. One of the hardest truths for people from your generation to face is that independence did not always come from encouragement. It often came from absence. This doesn't mean your parents didn't love you. Many of them worked endlessly, sacrificed deeply, and believed they were doing the right thing. But love without emotional availability still leaves a mark. When a child repeatedly has to handle fear, sadness, confusion, or disappointment alone, the brain draws a clear conclusion: needing others is risky, so the safest strategy is self-reliance. This is what many people mistake for maturity, when in reality it is what psychologists call defensive self-sufficiency, and it looks very functional on the outside. You become the reliable one, the problem solver, the one who holds everything together. Others lean on you because you seem unshakable, and you accept that role because it feels familiar. But inside, there's often a quiet loneliness because no one ever learned how to lean on you emotionally. And over time, you may even forget how to lean yourself. This is why so many comments say, I am always there for others, but I don't know how to let anyone be there for me, or I take care of everyone and then collapse in silence. This pattern also explains why vulnerability can feel so uncomfortable, even when you consciously want connection, because your nervous system learned vulnerability at a time when it led to disappointment, not comfort. And so today, when a partner asks you to open up, or a child wants emotional presence, your body reacts with tension, shutdown, or withdrawal, not because you don't care, but because your system is trying to protect you from an old risk that no longer exists. And this creates painful misunderstandings in relationships. Your partner may feel shut out, your children may feel distance, and you may feel misunderstood, judged, or pressured to be someone you don't know how to be. And instead of seeing this as a learned pattern, many people turn it into shame. I am broken. Something is wrong with me. I should be different, but nothing is wrong with you. Your nervous system learned exactly what it needed to survive at the time, and it has been using the same strategy ever since. The problem is not the strategy. The problem is that the environment changed and the strategy never got updated. And this is where compassion becomes essential, not as an abstract idea, but as a practical tool, because change does not begin by forcing yourself to open up. It begins by creating safety. Safety, to feel safety, to need safety, to rest safety, to be imperfect. For many of you, silence and solitude feel regulating because they were the only places where you were not required to perform strength. But solitude cannot replace connection forever, and strength without softness eventually turns into armor that isolates. And this is why so many people from your generation feel a deep emotional response to content like this, not because it tells them something new, but because it finally puts words to something their body has known for a long time. And the moment you recognize that your strength was forged in necessity, not choice, something softens inside you, because you no longer have to prove anything, you don't have to justify your exhaustion, and you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. And from that place, something new becomes possible, not a collapse, not a loss of identity, but a different kind of strength, one that includes support without shame and vulnerability without danger. When people talk about your generation, they often focus on what you can endure, but rarely on what your body has been enduring quietly for years. Because there's another pattern running through so many of the stories you shared: anxiety that seems to come from nowhere, chronic pain, fatigue that does not resolve, digestive issues, tightness in the chest, sleep that never feels restorative. And what makes this confusing is that many of you don't identify as anxious or fragile. See yourselves as functional, capable, grounded, and that is exactly why the symptoms feel so unsettling, because they don't match your self-image, But the body does not operate on identity, it operates on load. And when emotional load has nowhere to go, it does not disappear, it moves into the body. This is not metaphor, this is physiology. When emotions are consistently suppressed, the nervous system stays in a state of readiness, muscles tighten, breathing becomes shallow, digestion changes, and over time the body begins to speak the language the mind was never allowed to use. Many people from your generation describe reaching a point where their body forced them to stop an illness, a panic attack, an overwhelming exhaustion that finally broke through decades of pushing forward. And often the first reaction is frustration. Why now? Why when I've handled worse? But the question is not why now. The question is how long? Because strength without release accumulates pressure, and the body eventually demands regulation. What is especially painful is that many of you were taught to mistrust your own emotional signals. You learn to override discomfort, to keep going, to normalize strain. So even when your body is clearly asking for attention, you minimize it. You tell yourself, it's stress, it will pass. I just need to push a little more. And this repeats the original pattern. Once again, self-reliance in the face of need. And yet, some of you have discovered something important through these experiences, that slowing down, listening, resting, feeling are not indulgences. They are necessities. Your body is not betraying you. It is asking for what it never received before: space, safety, and permission to feel. And this is where healing often begins, not with dramatic emotional release, but with learning to notice your internal state without judgment, learning to recognize when tension is building, learning to stop before collapse. And for many of you, this feels unnatural, even wrong, because you were praised for endurance, not for attunement. But endurance has limits, and attunement is what allows strength to be sustainable. This is also why so many of you feel overwhelmed by the emotional language of younger generations. It can feel excessive, confusing, even destabilizing. But what they're often doing openly, you were forced to do alone, silently, and neither extreme is healthy suppression. Creates illness, and uncontained expression creates dysregulation. The goal is integration, the ability to feel without being flooded, to express without losing control, to rest without guilt, and to receive care without shame. And this is possible even now, even after decades of doing it differently, because the nervous system is not fixed, it learns through experience. And every time you allow yourself to pause, to name what you feel, to ask for support, and survive it, your body updates its understanding of safety, slowly, gently, not through force. And this is where true healing takes place, not by becoming someone else, but by finally giving your system what it needed all along. There is a moment that arrives for many people from your generation, usually in midlife, when you begin to realize that the rules you lived by are no longer working. You can still function, you can still provide, you can still push through, but something inside you starts asking a different question. Not can I handle this, but do I want to keep living this way? And that question can feel unsettling because it threatens an identity. You spent a lifetime building the identity of the strong one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't need much. But growth does not mean rejecting who you were. It means integrating what was missing. And this is where many of you stand now, between generations, between worlds, between ways of being. You grew up without emotional language, and you are now surrounded by it. You learn to love through action, and now love is asked to speak. You learn to survive without help, and now help is available, and your nervous system doesn't know what to do with that at first. And that confusion can look like resistance or withdrawal or irritation, but underneath it is fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being overwhelmed, fear of opening something you've kept contained for decades. And this is why healing for your generation must be approached with respect, not urgency, not force, not pressure. You don't need to tear down your armor all at once. You need to learn when you no longer need it. Healing begins with small, honest moments saying, I am tired, without justifying it, admitting something hurt, without minimizing it, asking for help with something manageable, and noticing that nothing catastrophic happens. Your nervous system learns through experience, not through insight. And each time you allow vulnerability and survive it, you weaken the old belief that needing others is dangerous. This also changes how you relate to those around you. Partners, stop guessing. Children feel seen. Colleagues, stop relying only on your competence and start seeing your humanity. And this does not make you less strong. It makes your strength accessible and shared. There's also an invitation here to stop judging yourself through the lens of the past. Your parents did what they knew, your environment shaped you, and you did what you had to do to survive. Understanding this is not blame, it is liberation. Because once you see that your patterns were adaptive, you can thank them for what they gave you and gently choose what no longer serves you. The world today does not need you to be unbreakable, it needs you to be present. Your generation carries something rare, the ability to endure, the capacity to focus, the depth of memory and meaning. But those gifts are most powerful when they are paired with connection, with rest, with emotional honesty. You are not late to this work, and you are not broken. You are exactly where someone who lived the life you lived would be. And the next step is not dramatic. It is compassionate. It is learning to live not only from strength, but from safety, not only from survival, but from connection. And if this resonates with you, take a moment to notice what you feel right now. Not to fix it, just to acknowledge it. That simple act is already a shift. And if you choose to continue this journey, share it with someone who grew up like you. Because healing for your generation does not happen in isolation. It happens when strength finally allows itself to be seen.